Welcome to the Big Fundamental Podcast, the San Antonio Spurs podcast brought to you by Ken's 5, the official TV station of the San Antonio Spurs. I'm Jackson Floyd, and joining me this week, we've got Evan Klosky.
What up?
And Tom Petrini.
How's it going, guys?
Guys, I've got the coffee here. I'm locked and loaded and ready to go. How are you guys doing?
I'm feeling like a champion, buddy. Not my mug, girlfriend's mug.
You're not a champion Charger is what you're saying.
Definitely not. I like to think I could compete in like some I said the other day, I was like, I could be like a good flag football, like adult league player. And I was like, I live in Texas. I've never played anything higher than like child's league flag football.
I feel like Tom would dominate in the Red Rover League.
Ooh, there you go.
I saw a really nasty stiff arm in a flag football league, and I was like, is that allowed? And they were like, yeah. I was like, all right, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, I did some gardening this weekend, and I learned that I cannot play any more sports. Like, I'm 31. My sporting age is beyond.
Is it like when you get a house, do you automatically become a garden guy?
You have to learn how to build garden beds within your first 3 years of owning a home. Otherwise, you're just kind of useless. It's just part of the thing. I think they take the home away from you if you don't pick up that skill. So
interesting,
guys.
I'm just trying to figure out garden guy.
Yeah, guys. Last time we spoke, it was hours before the trade deadline ended, and we were kind of all on the same page that, for the most part, the Spurs were going to stand pat. That's kind of what happened. There were small splashes. Of course, they bought out Aldridge after the deadline. They made one deal with the Golden State Warriors, sending Katie Lalane's, the rights to Katie Lalane to the Warriors for Marquise Chris and cash. Chris, of course, was already waived by the team in order to make room for Gorgui Dieng, who would, I guess, be the land of the deadline for this team, for this offseason, for this would be the land of this transaction, the transaction period for this team right now. Guys, what do you think of the Gorgui Dieng move? Let me get his name right.
Did you Google how to say his name?
I Googled it and I found a few videos. I think let's avoid one of the. We'll have to post this on Twitter. There's one video specifically. Maybe it's a Minnesota accent. I'm not sure, but it just butchers the name there. Should I play it, guys?
Yeah, I think you should.
I think you have to.
Gorgui dying. Gorgui dying.
So that's not how you pronounce Gorgui Dieng?
I believe it is Gorgui Dieng.
Yeah.
DJ Dieng.
It's like I looked it up. It's Jyeng.
Gorgui Dieng. I think I'm going to get this faster than they got Shamanich. When we drafted Luka, I was saying Samanich for about a week.
Everyone still is. It's like Gonzaga and Gonzaga. It's it's going to take a long time.
I still don't know that one, but definitely more important with people.
Anyways,
so
the team.
I mean, this was a great move, right? First off, shout out to Austin Day. Finally, his reign as the last midseason deal for the Spurs is now over. Chris, welcome to the club for 4 or 5 days. That was, and but look, Dieng was he was highly coveted in the buyout market. A lot of teams are after him, and not that he's an all-star by any means, but the one thing that this team desperately needs, especially offensively, is they need that spacer. They need a big who can hang out on the perimeter, open up the lane so that guys like, DeMar, Keldon, DeJounte, I mean, just half of this team attacks the basket aggressively. So you need that spacer to come out, clear the paint. And that was something that we talked about ad nauseum about LaMarcus. Like, hey, his defense isn't great, but what LaMarcus does for this offense is also great. So the problem is still probably a net negative, but he definitely makes the offense better. Having said that, Dieng, at least as a rim protector, is a bit more helpful than what LaMarcus can provide these days. So not only you can get the spacer offensively, who by the way is shooting the lights out of the ball from deep, probably not sustainable, but still, I mean, as long as he can hang around 40%, that would be awesome.
He's at 48% right now on about as many threes per game as LaMarcus was attempting, and like half of his shots almost come from that area of the floor.
Yeah. So that's great, and he won't be a complete liability on the other end. So I think when he entered the buyout market, the thing that was sexy about San Antonio is that the Spurs have a need for him, and that he's going to get minutes, he's going to play, and he's going to work himself into that rotation. And it just means that you're probably going to see less of Drew Eubanks. And I love Drew, but again, as I said before, he's kind of that utility player. You put him in when there's an injury. You put him in for a 5 to 10 minute stretch if there are too many fouls on one of your big guys. He goes in there, he does the job, and he does it pretty well. But when you play him more minutes, more of his weaknesses get exposed, and it's not as beneficial. So all around, a great snag by the Spurs, and also it makes total sense for Dieng because he's going to get playing time with San Antonio, and he's going to be part of the main rotation minutes.
Yeah, I completely agree that he's going to be a key guy here. And I mean, the list of other teams that were interested, right? Not scrubs. It was like the Suns, the Nets, both of which have superstars whose face Gorgui Dieng has gotten in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I don't think that's why he didn't go to those places. But the Sixers were also interested. The Knicks apparently. So there was a lot of interest for him, and it's because he brings, as a backup big man, more than Aldridge at this point. And Bobby Marks, ESPN, argued he would have taken him in LA over Andre Drummond. That's how much he likes what he brings on both ends of the floor and how valuable spacing is, right? We talk about it all the time, especially with this group of young guys. Evan, you hit it. They love driving. They love attacking the rim. And one, that's easier when you have a big man who can set good screens, space the floor reliably. Two, sets you up for assists if you draw a double team. And we've seen DeJounte's growth in that area. We've seen DeMar's growth in that area, continued growth in that area. And I think the biggest thing was, all right, it became clear that Aldridge wasn't the defensive center, right? That he couldn't start anymore. So you start Jakob Poeltl. Great for Jakob Poeltl, great for the defense in that starting unit, but the trade-off is the bench unit now is anchored by Drew Eubanks, who has put in a ton of effort. I mean, to get to where he is on a guaranteed contract, after being undrafted, undersized, doesn't really space the floor except for emergencies, right? He's 2 for 2 now from 3 in his career. Shout out Drew Eubanks. But I don't think he's ever going to be a key rotation player on a contending team, And Gorgui Dieng could be that. And I'm not saying that the addition makes the Spurs that, but it certainly raises both their floor and their ceiling on both ends of the floor. And if the question is, did they get better after the deadline? The answer is yes, because LaMarcus Aldridge wasn't coming back. But if the question is he an upgrade over Aldridge? There are people saying, oh, are you really saying that adding a career backup over a 7-time All-Star with like 21,000 points in his career is an upgrade? And it's like, well, it depends what you're making. Like, if you're making a meme that's like, all this to beat this, then you want Aldridge probably. But like, if you're trying to build a basketball team in the year 2021, probably go with Dieng. So I think a lot of people around the league have already realized this as like oh, damn, the Spurs did that kind of move. And it makes them a lot more dangerous. So I'm really excited to see, once he gets up to speed with this team, how they look with their fully realized roster for the rest of the year.
It really was an exercise in patience, I think, from our perspective, from the Spurs fans' perspectives as well. Just remember that this front office knows what they're doing. It may seem like in the moment they let the trade deadline pass by, making a minor move. What was the reason they brought Chris in? He was injured for the season. They got cash and considerations for him. They were able to waive him to create the space, and the cash kept the Spurs under the luxury tax and gave them the ability to sign Dieng without spending too much, without getting into that area. And the Holtz obviously want to stay under the luxury tax. It's a heavy price to pay if you're not one of the main contenders in the leagues. I think you guys both did something interesting there in talking about Dieng, and it'll be interesting to see how this evolves with his time in the Spurs. I mean, it's going to be really hard not to make a direct comparison to Aldridge with the move. He'll always kind of be in that light because that's the guy. Aldridge was the shadow over the season, the Aldridge question. What do we do with him? Is he going to be able to transition? And then when the transition didn't seem like it was there, he made the effort to do that, but his legs never really got under him. He never seemed healthy. He seemed feeling his age a little bit more this season. It was, well, what do they do from this point on? I thought in the Bulls game the other night, it really felt like the Spurs were happy to be out from under that shadow. Sure, Aldridge hasn't been with this team for a month, but to kind of just close the page on that book, that question isn't there. They're able to move on and be a fresh new team. Obviously, it didn't show up last night against the Kings, but we'll talk about that game later. It'll be interesting what Dieng brings to this team, and also just to see what this move means for the long term. I don't know if terms of the contract have been made available. Last time I checked, it wasn't really sure if this was 1 year.
So from what I've seen about the money moves and stuff so far, Dieng's deal, as I understand, is part of the mid-level exception. This is from Bobby Marks. Part of the mid-level exception for $1 million for the rest of the year. As far as the money moves go, like they reportedly brought back about $1.2 million with the Chris deal. Mm-hmm. Why did the Warriors do that? Because they didn't want to pay the luxury tax. They were like, if we have to pay this guy, we got to pay a whole bunch more because we have to pay this guy. So why don't you take him? We'll give you money. You can pay him with that. Do whatever with that. Just have fun. And the Spurs traded a guy who's never played in the NBA before. After being a second-round pick in 2015. So it was purely a financial transaction for the Warriors. And then after cutting Chris, he's still going to have an opportunity to rehab in San Antonio if that's, what he and the team want to do. Former lottery pick. So basically at the deadline, and Gorgui Dieng was owed $17 million for this year and gave back $700,000 of that to Minnesota, while the Spurs were able to recoup over $7 million from LaMarcus Aldridge, reportedly. Yeah. So the Spurs were able to save a bunch of money, stay under the luxury tax, and functionally add Gorgui Dieng, lose LaMarcus Aldridge, and get the opportunity to rehab a guy who, 8th pick in the 2016 draft, right? Former teammate of DeJounte Murray in college.
And they're still close. If you follow them on social media, DeJounte and Marquise Chris pop up all the time in each other's Instagram. Not all the time, but they make appearances in their social media feeds and Instagram stories and things like that. So
yeah, and I wanted to say, you got to remember, what it's great that LaMarcus gave a ton of money back. You got to remember that, in that scenario, the Spurs wanted LaMarcus in the backup rotational role, right? It wasn't in their plans to just say goodbye to LaMarcus. LaMarcus wanted to leave. He didn't like the role. So there was a need for a compromise. And that, LaMarcus definitely was generous with the amount of money he gave back, but I can understand the Spurs being like, look, if you want out, you got to give us, pretty much what your game checks would be the rest of the way, because this isn't a move that we want. This is what you want. And we'll meet you there. We'll give you what you want, but, you're going to have to give us something, as opposed to Dieng, who was just not getting minutes, right? So he was like, I'm not doing you any favors. You're not playing me. So totally different realm if you're wondering why one person is not giving back much and why the other person is. That's the context. As far as the deadline stuff and bringing up, Tom brought up a second-round pick who never played in the NBA in a random deal. But
he was actually the first professional basketball player I interviewed when I was first getting in the game. I came down here to Austin, went to an Austin Spurs game and interviewed Caddy LaLanne and UMass guy. So we talked about Boston. And of all the trade deadline deals that I was thinking the Spurs could make, Caddy Lane for Marquise Chris and cash considerations was not even like that thought had never materialized in any person's brain until it got tweeted 10 minutes after the deadline. Like I don't even think people in the Warriors or Spurs organizations formulated the thought. It was just a thing that kind of happened.
It was like Spurs trade? What the? But the number one thing that I heard is like, oh, you didn't get anything for these guys. Get something. Trade Rudy for what? And people go like, I'll just take some second rounders. And I always love this thing. Like, look, the Spurs are a phenomenal organization. All right, they do well with draft picks. Okay, I get it. They do well with first-round draft picks and have hit home runs in the second round. All right, now you have to understand that predominantly, not always, predominantly second-round picks don't amount to much in the NBA, all right? So you can give me examples of second-round picks who have amounted to something, and I'm going to say, of course, not every second-round pick stinks or doesn't make the NBA. Having said that, if you were to break it down to percentages, you would be in the heavy minority finding guys who emerge as significant role players in the second round. For the Spurs organization by themselves, you have to go back more than 10 years. DeJuan Blair is probably the last second-round pick who has made a significant impact on the team, all right? We're hoping that Trey Jones could maybe break that streak, but the jury's obviously still out. So DeJuan Blair. And then you look back at some other guys like Dragic, Scola, guys that never played for the Spurs. But you're going back now to a time where the Spurs were significantly ahead of international talent and evaluating international talent than others. Like you want to bring up Manu Ginobili? Back then, the Spurs tapped into a market that nobody else knew of. So it's a totally different game now. They're not sneaking up on international prospects are not sneaking up on anybody. People are still trying to find gems out there, and I get it, but it's a totally different ball game. So even beyond that, even when you get past DeJuan Blair, you're now looking at a bunch of second-round picks who were international guys who the Spurs had a leg up on other organizations to find. So trading Rudy Gay for second-round picks doesn't mean anything to the organization. They rather just have Rudy finish the year because he provides more of an impact than what that second-round pick is going to get them, most likely, okay? I can't say with 100% certainty, but most likely it's going to mean diddly-poo. So I don't know, I can't beat that drum more enough. And for all the other fans saying, well, we should have traded LaMarcus last year. Okay, if we want to be hindsight 2020, I get it. But you have to remember that LaMarcus started shooting three-pointers, something he never did before. There was a lot of optimism about him spacing the floor, how he fits. There still would be that optimism, but his legs completely gave out defensively. He became way more of a liability than I think any of us ever thought on the defensive side of the ball. His offensive skill set is there. It's still a great, he's still going to, him going to the Nets is ridiculous with what the offense is going to be. But the Nets are still going to give up tons of points. But the Nets are going to be able to outscore you. It's different. The Spurs can't do that with LaMarcus or without. It just doesn't matter. When you have three superstars on that team, you can sustain the bad defense that's going to come with LaMarcus Aldridge because him as a fourth option is phenomenal. I mean, he can do whatever he wants, and it seems like the Nets are going to let him play down low and do things that he wants to do. The Spurs, that's not their way anymore, and they're adapting. So, I'm sick and tired of hearing people, well, the Spurs didn't get anything for these guys. The front office is dumb, yada, yada, yada. It's not that simple. And playing the hindsight game, there are so many flaws with that. I can poke holes in all of your arguments. So, I still trust the front office. I still believe in what they're doing. And I don't think this team needs to give up guys for pennies on the dollar. For good or for bad, that's the way they operate. They're consistent.
You said a couple of things about LaMarcus there that reminded me of stuff that, we've all been saying this for a while, but stuff that I wrote and put on Ken's 5 weeks and months ago, or I guess in one case a day ago. But back when it was, LaMarcus Aldridge is leaving, I was like, he could go to a contender who needs, a floor spacing big man who can, won't be expected to protect the rim in any way, but can, provide buckets. So not the Brooklyn Nets. And I'm laughing at that now because it's pretty funny. But on the Nets, like, I still think that Joe Harris and Nick Claxton are their fourth and fifth best players. And, the combined, whatever it is, 14 All-Star game appearances between Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and LaMarcus Aldridge. It's great to put in the wall. It's great to put it in the meme. But, like, they're not going to be All-Stars ever again.
Blake Griffin kind of spoke to that, and the reaction that people had seeing him on the Nets, like, oh, he was
right.
He looked terrible. He was so bad in the Pistons, and I guess he was faking it or taking it, and now he looks great on the Nets. He's like, well, I can't be all-star Blake Griffin for the Nets and be this terrible guy from the Pistons. Like, I'm just Blake Griffin. I think Spurs fans are going to have that same realization. We bashed Aldridge a few times down the season for what he was on defense. We're going to see headlines about how good he is for the Nets. Oh, the resurgent LaMarcus Aldridge. He hit 80% of his fadeaway 2-pointers for the Nets in his first game with the team. Just be ready to see that, I think.
And my thing is, I'll always say this, LaMarcus Aldridge, this year with the Spurs, was still an offensive threat. He was. Nobody ever doubted the ability to get buckets for LaMarcus. Sure, there's some nights where it's not necessarily clicking, and that's the problem, right? LaMarcus, when he was playing, was a significant part of the offense, all right? He was the number 2 option, I think, next to DeMar. And when you make LaMarcus that big of a focus, that's a bit of a problem. You're leaning on him much more. I don't think LaMarcus is as consistent offensively as he once was, but that doesn't mean he still can't drop a 50-burger on somebody when he has one of those days where he just doesn't miss, And I'm sure we're gonna see one of those games. He's going to have one of those games where he pops off for like 35, 40 points. But the difference being is when you're surrounded by Harden and Durant and Kyrie, LaMarcus can stink and nobody's ever gonna bat an eyelash. He's gonna be.
I don't think he's going to hit 35 or 40. I don't think he's going to be able to play the minutes necessary to do that.
Well,
one time they rest everybody. He starts a game, maybe. I don't see it happening.
The Nets are going to rest people. He's going to get minutes. They are. I don't know. I'm not saying the playoffs he's going to do it. I'll put it right now. 35 or more is going to happen once from LaMarcus Aldridge. The rest of the season.
All right, we'll have to decide on a wager by the end of the episode.
Yeah, well, that's my prediction. But again, like Blake Griffin, when he's on the Pistons, he's the sole focus point. Now he's on the.
One thing I gotta say about Blake Griffin, though, right? Like he was right that people were dumb for being like, oh, he's washed, and then the Nets get him, and that's unfair. That line of thinking is dumb. If you saw Blake Griffin play in Detroit, it was like, have you ever seen a Pegasus, right? I haven't seen a Pegasus. But you ever seen a Pegasus without wings? You have. You have, Evan. It's a horse. They're all over the place. There's nothing special about him. That's what Blake Griffin looked like. He's this tremendous flying freak, and then he can't fly anymore, right? He didn't dunk for a year.
Yeah.
And then they're playing in a game against the Pistons. He catches a lob and crams it, and then he's talking about how he still got it. Like, you didn't show that you still had it until, like, right now. So, I understand that. I understand that line of, like, criticism for Blake Griffin. What I don't foresee happening, though, is LaMarcus Aldridge, like, defending pick and roll, getting a switch on, like, an all-star guard, moving his feet quickly, locking him up on the perimeter, and then, like, talking smack to the Spurs bench. I don't think that'll happen.
No, I still think that look, the Nets are good enough offensively where they can bomb you out of the gym. It doesn't matter. But if I'm playing the Nets, I'm just attacking Aldridge and pick and rolls all day. Like, and Nets fans might learn this, right? The front office might say, like, oh, maybe he's not that bad. Like, look at all the positives. He's just depth, whatever it might be. In the end, again, I always say this was like Pau Gasol, man. Like, obviously, LaMarcus is still much better than what Pau Gasol was when he fell off the cliff. But just having said that, when Pau Gasol was with the Bucks and came over to play the Spurs. The Spurs like just crammed it down his cram hole. Like they just like, oh, we know how to beat this. Pew 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 pew. And then what happened? Pau Gasol never got minutes anymore with Milwaukee after they were like, you know what? He is cooked.
Pau Gasol played 3 games with the Bucks, and that was one of the games.
Yeah.
And after that one, they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we get it now."
Yeah.
But like you can do that to every big man on the Nets except for Nick Claxton. Nick Claxton is great. I love him.
Yeah,
I think this was a bad signing for the Nets because it limits the amount of minutes that Nick Claxton is going to command moving forward.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree with you to that extent, right? I mean, between Jordan, and this is the last I'll say, between Jordan, Aldridge, Griffin, I think they're just kind of, when you have that many superstars who believe they're superstars, but they're not superstars anymore, I'm wondering how that dynamic's going to go, especially because you have guys also like Durant and Kyrie and Harden who are superstars and are still those superstars and don't want to deal with your antics. So
it's very like 04 Lakers vibes.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how it all shakes out, because if LaMarcus really wasn't happy here, which because of a reduced role, all of a sudden he's going to be okay in a reduced role with Brooklyn. All of a sudden,
because they're competing for a title, right?
I get it, but the thing is, LaMarcus still believes that he's the guy that he's not anymore. That's the facts. LaMarcus still believes he's got more in the tank than what he does, and that's. I don't
know if that's it. I think what happened was the Spurs were like, "You're not that guy anymore," and he was like, maybe at a certain point he was like, "Damn, you're right." Like, and he tried, and he didn't like it here, doing the bench thing, and he's like, well, if I'm not going to be that guy anymore, I might as well be over there with them and hope I get a ring out of it, right? I think that's probably what happened. It's a little column A, little column B.
Yeah, okay, I'll buy into that for sure.
I can get behind that too. Tom, I'm curious, who would score 35 points first? Current day LaMarcus Aldridge or current day Steve Nash?
I bet Steve Nash can still cook. I honestly though, the thing that would surprise me about LaMarcus Aldridge scoring 35 points would not be that he scored 35 points. It would be that he was in the game for more than 20 minutes to do it. Like that's the part that I don't believe, because his offensive game is there, right? Like I wrote this in the Gorgui Dieng thing. Like he's like one of the former like bodybuilders turned actors that is in the Expendables movies, right? Like the part of his game that's never going away, like the one-liners after he kills somebody, that's staying in. Like you're gonna get at least 5 of those the whole movie, Just don't expect him to move a train by himself, because he's not 25 anymore. Like, he's always gonna have, like, LaMarcus Aldridge will be 90 and just cooking people at the YMCA. I fully 100% believe that, because his game is unguardable. If he can, especially in this pick and pop, he can be a great complementary big man offensively. And he's always going to have the footwork, even if he doesn't have like legs above those feet that really work right anymore. But I think that I would love to see Steve Nash and LaMarcus Aldridge run pick and pop. Like that would be a fun, like 2K my team thing. Like those two would be really fun together.
Yeah.
The thing with LaMarcus Aldridge is like the mindset that he's playing with now, that is probably going to extend his career a little bit, could have benefited him earlier in his career with the Spurs. And I think that's the thing that a lot of Spurs fans are going to think about, about his tenure here.
Going back to the Dieng signing, I just have 2 more points I want to bring up. One, Evan, you mentioned that the Spurs kind of getting ahead of the game in the early aughts on international scouting. Dieng kind of spoke to something similar about that and when in his first kind of press conference with the Spurs media, and just the role that R.C. Buford has played in his life. That R.C. Buford is someone he's known long before he was able to speak English. That R.C. Buford's role in Basketball Without Borders, getting scouts to Africa, getting players from Africa into the United States to take part in camps and to intermingle with NBA players, has led to players like Joel Embiid and Gorgui Dieng getting involved in the NBA. Pretty cool to see kind of come full circle, and that kind of gives you the respect that I think Dieng has for the Spurs organization. And also bringing Dieng in now, doing the buyout process now, it may not be for further than this season, on paper right now, but you get the chance to convince him that you're a place he could play long-term if that's what you want to do, that maybe he will fit great in the pick and pop with Derek White and DeJounte Murray. Maybe he's that complementary guy they've been missing to play alongside Pirtle, or to be that next rotational guy with Pirtle, that they're the kind of the front court complementary team that they have. So this is a great kind of, interview process in a sense to work it out between both Dieng and the team to show that this might be a fit in the long term if that's what the Spurs want to do. Do you think?
And they gave up nothing for it.
Exactly.
Like for Collins, you gotta give up like pieces, right?
Yep.
For a rental, for a guy who can choose to just be out, right? Spurs gave up nothing at the deadline and improved their team.
But Evan, I think that's something the Spurs want to do. That Dieng is the guy they're considering keeping around for 3 years.
So for sure, I think that it's a tryout, right? It's not only a tryout for Dieng, but it's also for him a great opportunity to play and showcase his abilities for entering free agency. But the other element is even beyond the player itself. It gives the Spurs sort of this idea of, hey, how does our team look with the spacer? How, maybe he's not the guy that they get next year, but at least conceptually they can say, this is working. Now we can maybe invest way more into this thought than previously, right? Like, maybe this, they see that Dieng is doing a great job, and more so than Dieng doing a great job, the spacing has helped the other players. So they might say, okay, well, maybe we can now heavily invest in Collins. Maybe we can heavily invest in marketing because now we see how this works and we love it. And if it doesn't work out and things aren't opening as much as they're seeing, maybe they're like, okay, maybe this isn't the route we should commit ourselves to. Maybe we can bring back Dieng on cheap and go a different route and find somebody else to, work into a piece here. So from the player to try out, and also conceptually speaking, it's a great stretch of games to see, okay, how does this work with us and our future?
Yeah, Evan, I think that's like one of the more big-brained things you've ever said on this show, just about it being like, a trial run essentially for the idea. I like that. That whole concept is a very good one, I think, for the team, right? Because, like you said, there are other guys who do this job and who aren't career backups, right? Dieng raises the ceiling for now. He was by far the best available at a position of need. But moving forward, you play with the concept. And Pop is a concepts guy. He's an ideas guy. He's a form and function guy. Mm-hmm. And so to have Dieng come in, play this role, because it's not just, playing on the bench, right? If the team is, really struggling spacing the floor, or if Yak is in early foul trouble or late foul trouble or trouble at the foul line because he's still shooting under 40% from the line this year, that makes it kind of tougher to play him late in the fourth quarter if a team decides to hack him. So, Dieng becomes that safety valve of, oh, you're going to start hacking Yak. Here's a dude with a 7'4" wingspan who not only can shoot free throws at almost a 90% clip, I think, but he's like 48% from deep this year. So have fun with that. And the Spurs didn't really have that, right? Like, Trey Lyles was not getting those minutes or opportunities. I'm sure there are reasons for that. Spurs almost dealt him at the deadline, if we're to believe Shams, which I don't know if we are anymore, Shams. I don't know if I trust you anymore. This is like the third time that on Spurs-related matters you've led me astray, so I don't know. I still love you, Shams. But Yeah, Shams Charania has tweeted out, like, at the deadline, the Spurs were sending Trey Lyles in a 3-team deal to Dallas, I believe. And then, like, that got deleted. And then it was like, well, JK, 2-team deal, Spurs not involved. But he didn't say Spurs not involved. He just pretended he didn't tweet that. So, like, I mean,
deny.
If you're Trey Lyles at home though, like, watch it. Like, I'm sure somebody texted him like, "Hey, did you see this?"
Yeah. Because
everybody saw it. So I don't think Lyles is in the plan long term for the Spurs, which for me is, unfortunate. I thought he was a guy who could have played that stretch for maybe defend multiple positions role, but Dieng has proven he can do that better in the league to this point. So. I'm really excited to, like I said, to see how he fits with all of his new teammates here.
Do we have any indication on where we're going to see him? Is he playing tomorrow night against the Kings?
I'm not sure if he's playing tomorrow night. In the pregame yesterday, he hasn't played since February. So there's going to be some getting him back into playing shape, and also that whole chemistry thing with the Spurs that is rather important for any basketball team, but especially for the Spurs. You want to get him up to speed, but he should be a pretty natural fit. He's the kind of guy whose game doesn't take a lot of adjustment from his teammates, and who he can play with pretty much anybody who can handle the ball. His job is pretty defined, and because of that, I think acclimating him will be a little easier than if it was somebody whose job was a little more complex and needed to make a lot more reads in the system. He has to make less reads, more screens, and shots when he's open, which is an easier thing to get up to speed on.
Yeah. Now the Spurs team is 1-5 over the last 6 games, which is I don't think where we expected them to be. As they are in the midst of a record homestand. Of course, some of the opponents have been the best teams in the East. They played the 76ers. They, played the Bucks during that stretch too. However, there've been a few penciled in wins on the schedule, if you will. We talked a little bit about the Charlotte Hornets last time. I think this Kings team, they're surging. They're on a 5-game win streak coming in, but that was still one that you thought was a winnable opportunity. What have you guys seen from the Spurs down this stretch that might be kind of a pattern that's evolving from this losing streak, and how do they fix it?
I think for me, we need to see the other Kings game, right? If the Spurs win on Wednesday, I'm expecting a split. The Spurs aren't a team that's going to sweep these double headers. That's why the Hornets game hurt, because they should have won that game with exceptional defense, and their offense was terrible. The second Clippers game hurt. They should have won that game because of exceptional defense, but their offense was worse than terrible. And then, last night, when the Spurs score 115, they should win those games. When the Spurs score 115, they should win those games. It was an unlucky circumstance for a team to go, 18 of 36 from deep. You had the opposite end of that against the Bulls, where the Bulls just couldn't hit anything from deep. And I think, a trend that we're seeing, the three-point defense is suffering lately. And even in that game against the Bulls missed wide-open shots. That's make or miss league, whatever, and the Bulls had tons of great looks, and they missed. The Kings last night, it's one of those things where I thought they got tons of great looks, and then the times where those looks were not as open, they were just feeling themselves and were still making them drop. To the point where it was like, what are you going to do? And I get, fans are frustrated because that happens a lot against San Antonio, where teams just cook. And it's like, what are you supposed to do? I can't explain that. That's part of a little bit of luck, a little bit of skill, sort of that deal. I mean, the Kings hitting 18 three-pointers is ridiculous. I don't even care if those 36 shots are wide open. They shouldn't go 18 of 36. Having said that, the Spurs haven't been putting enough pressure on the three-point line where I think they should be. So I think, no practice time is accumulating. Every team has to deal with that, but I think with the Spurs, more importantly, as a young group, they kind of need to get recentered, and not having practice time has hurt. 2, three-point line needs to be a point of emphasis again. 3, limiting teams in transition. This team is supposed to be – they are still, numbers-wise, all-world in transition. Against the Kings, they got cooked. So they didn't turn the ball over a ton of times, but the Kings capitalized on like every time they turned the ball over. One of their well, my light went out. So there you go. So the thing is with the Kings is they just crunch the Spurs on points off of turnovers, and usually thank you, Courtney, as we're getting the light fixed. Usually the Spurs are able to swim through, 10 or so turnovers a game. They'll be fine. But beyond that, yeah, it was just that's a problem. Like they have to stop giving up points off turnovers, and it starts to stop turning the ball over. And the San Antonio is just not a good enough team to overcome that. They're supposed to be defensive minded. They barely got any points off turnovers. Outside of the beginning of the season, their transition game offensively has not been good. So, we're just seeing a very inconsistent group. We're just right now, you're getting great defense on bad offensive nights, and you're getting great offense on bad defensive nights. You're having halves where you're playing exceptionally well. You're having halves where you play exceptionally horrible. Similar theme to what we talked about last week, and we're still stuck in that minutia of just like, I don't know what we're going to get. I don't know what we're going to get quarter to quarter. I don't know what we're going to get half to half. Even the Bulls game, when you're up by $1 billion, they tried to give that up. It's just this team is just not locked in for a full 48. And they're not locked in for a full 24. Like, whatever it is, they're just like, I can't tell you just because they're playing like crap in quarter one that they're not going to just crush them in quarter two and vice versa. So it's infuriating to watch right now, honestly. And I'm sure that's what the staff is feeling.
I think you hit it where, you're not going to get 48 minutes on both ends of the floor from any team in any game. But the Spurs haven't even been close. Like, it has been, real Jekyll and Hyde stuff. And, when I see a bad first quarter, I'm like, oh, cool. Because in my mind, like, the Spurs are going to play one quarter per game that's just an abomination to the game of basketball. It would make Dr. James Naismith just absolutely sick to his stomach to watch it. And if they can get that out of the way early, cool. Like, it's because, if it's got to happen, it's better to happen early. But it's better that it happens early because then you can make adjustments, right? You can try to figure some stuff out. So, it presents some opportunities for this team, I guess, if you want to go glass half full. But yeah, no, they've got a lot of figuring out to do. But I think that goes back to what Coach Pop and all of these guys really said, not a couple of weeks ago was, this is a young group with a lot of room to learn and improve. And that's why they've got so much higher a ceiling than a lot of other teams that are playing at a similar level, because they have that opportunity to get it together. One thing you didn't mention, it was a lot of team stuff, which, obviously team game. But like when DeMar is out and the team struggles, we talk a lot about how the team has struggled without DeMar, right? Lonnie Walker had career-high 31 points in a loss to Milwaukee that was really close game. It was the last game that the Spurs played that I was like, wow, that was a great game. And in the loss to Charlotte, he played 9 minutes. He was clearly dealing with that wrist injury. He hasn't played since. So functionally, the Spurs are 1-4 with him not playing or being limited here. So I understand that he's not like the engine for this team, but the guy was averaging 26 minutes a game. He was really just getting to that point, not just in the season, but in his career, right? Where he's finally putting together the athletic gifts and the talent for the game with, understanding it. And then he goes down with the wrist injuries, clutch points, prematurely pronounces him dead via tweet.
You see Lonnie?
Right.
Lonnie tweet that?
That was if you didn't see it, Clutch Points put up this graphic with like praying hands, and they were like, rest up, Lonnie. And then in small print underneath, it was like Lonnie Walker 4 will be out for a week with a wrist injury, and Lonnie responds to it and says, "I almost said R.I.P. my damn self."
Yeah, I was trying to. All this for a wrist. I almost said R.I.P. to my damn self.
Someone else.
But on a serious note, like this Spurs team is missing him on both ends, right? Evan, you mentioned the 3-point line, an issue on both ends for this team, right? On some nights they can't stop teams from getting these wide open looks. On other nights they can't convert their own wide open looks, which they've generated with frequency, right? And Lonnie Walker has been one of the better 3-point shooters on this team, in addition to taking on some of the better defensive, like bigger defensive matchups. So, I mean, he's a key contributor on this team, and I think it's, I hope he's not out for too much longer, but if he is, at what point do more people start saying, hey, this team really misses Lonnie Walker right now?
Yeah.
I will say this, in my opinion, I don't know if causation equals correlation in that sort of deal. I mean, when Lonnie's on the court, when this team was humming, not like they were doing great during those Lonnie minutes. I think there's something bigger with these issues than Lonnie being out, and I think to an extent Lonnie being out doesn't help with, as you mentioned, 3-point offense and 3-point defense. I think that's where he does help. I think a lot of other things is where it breaks down. Having said that, there is just I don't want to put too much importance on Lonnie Walker being out. I just, I get it. They're not playing well without him, but there are stretches where they weren't playing well with him. And I haven't seen any trends to where it's like, like when DeMar DeRozan is out, I can point to all these numbers being like, offensively, they stink. Like literally there's like 1 or 2 games where they've been over like 110 points per possession, which is their average, which is continually getting decreased. But when DeMar is out, I can tell you it's going to be an offensive grind. When Lonnie's out, sometimes there is, sometimes it isn't. I mean, the defense, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. So it's just –
Well, does that speak to his overall game, though, where DeMar, is an offensive player, and when Lonnie's out, you don't know where the Spurs are going to miss him most?
Yeah, I just don't know. I think that I just think that overall other people need to step up more consistently, right? Like DeJounte had an all-world first half against the Kings, one of the best of his career, the best, arguably, of his career. And then the
best scoring half of his career.
Yeah, and then second half, the faucet runs out. So it's
Well, and after the game, I asked him about it. I was like, was it something that the Kings did? What happened in the second half? Which he didn't seem too thrilled about me asking the question. He was a little bummed out after the game. But he gave an interesting answer, which was that he didn't get his number called, which is a pretty transparent, critique of the coaching, like, give me the ball more, which we don't see from Spurs players. We rarely see from NBA players. So, I mean, it's something that I think everybody's got to figure out. But like Keldon, too, right? We love Keldon here, son of the pod. But he has games and halves where, he disappears a little bit. And he's still figuring out team defense. He's still, understanding where to be. Like there was one transition break where DJ's running, Derek's going to the corner, and Keldon is between them, and Keldon's like, hey, I'm here. And DJ's like, get over there. Like, you cut, then you take that guy, and I can pass to Derek, and he gets a 3. And it was great, like, slow motion, like, teaching, right? When you looked at the clip, right, it's you see him, DeJounte, literally directing traffic and making the right play. But that's something that Keldon still needs to learn. Derek White still getting his legs back under him, right? He's hopefully getting back into the lineup for the last time this season.
Yeah.
Because this is his third. He got a tooth knocked out or chipped again, hit his dentist punch card thing, and he was back in the game in the same quarter. He should have been a hockey player. But I'm very glad that he's a basketball player for this team. So they have a good group of pieces here. And it's really just about putting it all together for a full game effort.
I was pretty high thinking that Lonnie Hawk. I thought this was going to be a good Keldon Johnson game last night. First of all, he hits the banter challenge in the pregame warm-up. I don't know if you guys saw the video of that. Second of all, Mariah Carey's birthday was the day before. You gotta play it for Mariah. I think it kind of speaks to what both of you guys are saying. When there's adversity, it's harder to overcome if you're young and inexperienced. If a player suddenly is out of the rotation who is taking 26 minutes a game, that's something that younger players don't play through a lot. Once you have the experience of kind of knowing that rotation shifts are going to happen, knowing that you might be without DeMar DeRozan for 5 games, and then you might be without Lonnie Walker for 5 games. That's all stuff you got to learn and being experienced in the league. And the younger players are kind of going through that. Whether that speaks to the value Lonnie Walker has in the court in comparison to DeMar DeRozan is another story. But I do think that the players miss the rotations. The players. It's like when you buy a brand new pair of shoes. You're uncomfortable for a couple of days, right? You got to fill your new shoes. You got to find a new role, and you can kind of feel that out for a bit. But I think there's just a little bit more of being comfortable with each other, being comfortable with adversity, and being comfortable with kind of changing things like that. I do think, one night I need to put the Pokemon down and actually do the math on this. The Spurs get burned by point guards. It's a thing. We were talking about going into the Kings game. I was telling Tom before this season, De'Aaron Fox's career high was 44 against the Spurs. We talk about it all the time. Ja Morant cooked the Spurs 3 times this season. Trae Young has had a game against the Spurs. Kyrie Irving in the past has always had games against the Spurs. It's just I need to do the math. I need to sit down and actually put the stats together. But I wouldn't say De'Aaron Fox was cooking. It wasn't specifically the reason the Kings won. They went 18 for 36 as a team. But I wouldn't be surprised if De'Aaron Fox had another good game tomorrow night. And then they got Trae Young in a couple days here too. So
the thing about all these guys is they're stars, right? In their own special way. Like each one of those, even Buddy Hield, right? People forget how highly coveted Buddy Hield was coming out of school. And he's grown so much since then.
Yeah.
I see a lot of not saying this is you, Jackson, but I see a lot of criticism for the Spurs, heralded defensive, young guard players, DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Lonnie Walker to an extent. And it's well, if they're so good defensively, then why are they allowing great players to put up good numbers? Because they're great players. That's what they do. That's how the game works. You play defense, and sometimes Ja Morant drops 40 on your head. It happens. And
I'm totally fine to concede that ballers are going to ball, And if I can keep playing Pokemon, I'm on Mount Moon right now, so I got ways to go. But yeah.
And you got to remember some of those matchups you were dealing with LaMarcus Aldridge. And the pick and roll stuff is just got cramped.
So it might not be a pattern in general, but I'm just going to still stand on my hill and say that the Spurs get cooked by point guards. And
Spurs get cooked by point guards, and the Spurs always get cooked by somebody random. It's one of the two. There's always a point guard. There's always somebody random.
Yep.
For every Trae Young, there's a Lou Dort. But
yes.
Coming up here, guys, we've got another game against the Kings, and then they wrap up the homestand with the Pacers and the Cavaliers. Are we penciling in W's for those? How do we feel about the rest of the stretch here?
There's no penciling in with W's, but I would argue that they got to win out the rest of the homestand.
Yeah.
Or else you're going to have to start stealing some games where I would normally pencil them in as losses and be down the line. We're going to be you've got to win them. Again, I said this homestand really should have been 6-3. And they've already up to 4 losses now. So, you can't afford any more losses.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, literally, you're living on the road after the stretch, and that might be a good thing. They're a better road team. I don't know why. I don't know why they stink in the AT&T Center. This used to be like their domain, and now they can't. People come in, take off their shoes, stomp on your couches, leave Snicker wrappers around, and then they leave. You know, and they don't care. So, you know, I think there needs. I think certainly after the season there needs to be an emphasis of having pride in defending the home court again. And giving a crap about that, for better or for worse, for, you know, random teams popping off, whatever it might be, not acceptable. It's not acceptable to be this bad at home, especially when you're San Antonio. So,
and even if there's no crowd, right? It's your gym. Like there's a statistical truth at like all levels of the sport where you shoot better on the rim that you are most used to shooting on, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and I mean,
even though they're all the same height, even though, you know, it's like, you know, indistinguishable. You're used to the lines of sight in that gym. You're used to it. So I'm excited to see this team play in front of a roaring crowd, a packed house at the AT&T Center. You know, maybe next year. But like, you know, we'll see how this team is able to rally. But yeah, they've got to execute with the rest of this homestand, because if they don't, they're going to be in a bigger hole than they can afford to be in going toward a really difficult home stretch of the season.
Yeah, this is the rallying point, as you said, Evan. They have a huge stretch of games on the road here coming up. Just was it 7 more games at home after the stand? Is that the number? I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
7, yeah.
So I mean, this is it. And making the playoffs isn't the most important thing to the Spurs team. They're still going to probably be in that running for the round robin, not the little tournament they're doing for the 7-11 spot.
Play-in.
And thank you. Man, try out, play in. I got my sports words down. Good here. So I mean, but this is a chance here to kind of solidify your spot in that opportunity there. Going forward for us, it'll be a little different here on the podcast as we say goodbye to our very own Evan Klosky as he takes off for Tampa Bay. I guess he's got to be a Tampa Bay Raptors guy now. Is that your role at the
big Raptors guy? It's unfortunate to be a Raptors guy.
Tampa Baines.
Tampa Baines. There we go. Yeah, of course, Evan is taking over as the sports director for 10 News, WTSP, our sister station, and tagging it down in that area. Evan, I just want to clear the floor here, give you a chance to spout off some Spurs knowledge. Any final thoughts you have here for the Silver and Black hopefuls followers?
Wait, no, hold on. I want to interview him. I got questions. I got questions for this guy. Break out the crystal ball man.
Crystal ball man.
I see your prediction abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So you said on your final newscast here on Ken's 5, which I clipped dutifully, sadly, that you see the Spurs entering the Western Conference Finals in the next 5 years.
Yes.
All right.
I do believe
First,
that.
why do you say that? Second, when the Spurs do that, who's going to be their best player on the roster, and why do you think that?
That's a great question. And the answer might be unknown. There could be another piece coming in. But reason I say that is because I know fans have been really worked up these past few years. And I've tried to hammer this home as much as I can. But the team was just completely SOL'd when Kawhi Leonard left. They built an entire roster around Kawhi Leonard. Their entire future was with that man in mind and giving him the max and having him in San Antonio forever and putting his number in the rafters. And that's just not the way things shaked out. And they have spent now 3 years trying to find a new identity. They have really done such an amazing job in the draft throughout their time. I think really Lonnie Walker is maybe my biggest question mark. Not that, again, I know it seems like I'm a Lonnie Walker hater. Not that I don't have full belief in him, and not saying that he can't be an integral part of the future. just saying that his development has not been to the level where I would prefer it to be at this point. But he's still 22 years old, super young. And, I think that he still has a pretty well-defined role with this team in the future, whether he hits the ceiling or not. They have all of these tremendous core pieces and a lot of guys who can step up in the playoffs and defend the heck out of the ball. They do not have that gravitational pull, that true superstar to really take them over the hump. And I think someone in these next 5 years will emerge as that. DeJounte, what he's done this year, really makes me super optimistic about what he's going to do as the guy. Derek White, when he's not getting injured every other game, as long as that man can stay healthy, which has really been the one true knock on him, even when they signed him to that contract. If he can stay healthy, he is legit. Devin Vassell, we haven't even scratched the surface of what Devin Vassell is going to bring to this group. His defensive prowess is phenomenal, and his offensive game will blossom the more that the team gives him the keys to the car, which will happen over time. Right now, that's just not his role. What we've seen from Šamanić, as far as progression goes, from where I would have said last year, he hasn't shown me anything, to this year being showed me a lot. I mean, ever since come back from the bubble, more so defensively speaking, we know his offensive game. I think that Šamanić, he reminds me of when, and this is going to be super biased to me, but when I was covering Gonzaga and they had Rui Hachimura, came in as a freshman. He ended up playing in that year where they made it to the national championship and lost, but he actually played in that game against West Virginia where, the Zags hit in the last minute a three-pointer to win the game. And, he stepped up offensively, and you see some of these things, and you just realize that every year you're going to give him a little bit more responsibility. And, I think that he could be the next star for this team. He is a unicorn. He really is. So if he can just really make it all happen, he does have those Giannis-like abilities. So I just think when you look at this team, big picture, worst case scenario, they could end up like the Nuggets, where they're just a little too deep, without Jokic, obviously. But the Nuggets, I think their one thing is they're probably a little too deep, that when you get to the playoffs, it's better to have superstars consolidated playing 35, 38 minutes versus, doing what you do in the regular season. But they have tons of money in this offseason. I trust Brian Wright. I trust, the front office to really use that wisely. Whether they use it on DeMar or not, I don't think you should commit to him long term. I think 3 years is probably the max you would do. But if they can just find one big, they can find one big to help Jakob out and really, continuously kind of put their stake in the ground as far as defense goes. I said it again. They're going to lead the NBA in points against, and it's going to be suffocating. When this team is on a roll, nobody is going to score on them consistently. And I think that's the move where they're zigging where other teams are zagging. Teams like the Nets are bringing in star power to outscore you and not give a crap about defense. And the Spurs are going to try it the opposite way. We are going to stop your scores as much as we can, and we're going to be pretty damn good at it. And what's going to happen when we can score on you because you think defensively? So, honestly, that second part is the biggest question mark. I don't know how they're going to score consistently, but I know that they're going to defend consistently at their peak. So that's why I think they're a Western Conference Finals team at least, because they're going to have about 7 years. I shouldn't say 7. They're going to have 5 to 6 years of continuity with this group when they hit their peak, and you can't teach that. I don't foresee a lot of these guys leaving the organization between Keldon, Luka, Lonnie, Derek, DeJounte, Vassell, whoever they're going to draft this year, Yak. I don't see those guys leaving. I think that they're going to ride with them, and they just need to utilize their money properly. I think Patty will be back. So
I just got to say, Evan, I think I finally figured you out, like, and I appreciate it so much more now. Like, I asked you to take out the crystal ball, and I had a whole bunch of other questions, but you answered all of them in that thing that I have always just thought was just you rambling. You were reading my mind and answering the questions that I was asking. I finally get that. So I've got one quick one. Next time you go to All-American, what are you getting? This question is for the two of us only.
Oh, wow. Man, people out there don't even know All-American Burger. They don't even know you don't know what it's like to get back from Jones Beach or Tobay Beach, just get off to Seaford Oyster Bay, go to All-American.
I said quick, damn it.
Drop $10 and just get the menu. But they're what is it? Like they have like the knish.
Yes. Okay.
Dude, the knish, and I'm getting like 3 burgers and 2 fries for $5.
Yeah. Shake. What flavor shake?
Strawberry.
Yes, that's my guy. Okay. Wow. All right. We're best friends now, and you're leaving. And one thing that is very unfortunate through this whole thing is, I've been here in Austin for most of my time here, and none of the three of us have ever gotten a beer together. So Evan, grab one. Jackson, you're working. This is my day off, so let's raise a toast. I saw you. Did you give Aaron a Busch Light?
The story behind the Busch Light, very quickly. When the Cougs and Iowa State played in the Alamo Bowl, Iowa State, they burned the town out of Busch Lights. So I think Aaron did a story on how the town is dry on Busch Lights because of Iowa State. And he gave me this can, an empty can, and he left me like some sort of note. And so I kept it. I kept it the whole time, and I gave him back the can at the end, saying "People don't forget." So yeah.
It inspired me of. Have you ever heard of a Busch Latte?
What's a Busch Latte?
It's when you need to consume beers in public or where people can see you. So you put them in like an opaque coffee cup, and then you're good.
I just want to remind you, I'm Tom's boss, so.
And Jackson, to remind you, I'm doing a bit with complete plausible deniability.
Yeah.
I have to cook it today, so I'm not going to open it, but I've got a Washingtonian beer here for you.
I love that. A little space dust?
A little space dust,
Yeah, people also don't know about that Elysian life.
They need to get on it.
Evan, we're going to miss you terribly, even though you never shut up. And I think that's the best way I can say it, man. We're really going to miss you here. You've brought so much to our coverage of this team that we all love so much. It's been one of the great pleasures of my career thus far doing this show with you, and it won't be the same without you, buddy.
Man, I appreciate
it. Cheers to you.
To echo what Tom said, too, I think you got into the heavy rotation with the pod when my son was born and I was out for a month, and you and Cameron were carrying the flag there for a bit, and then we decided to keep you around a little bit after that and keep you working into the rotation here. It's just been I think we've really hit a groove with the three of us, and just you helped us kind of elevate this pod to another level. You have such a knowledge and expertise into this, and your ability to do the deep dive into the analytics brought a lot to the podcast too. We're really going to miss you and everything you did here for the podcast. So best of luck in Tampa Bay.
I appreciate you both, man. And I've been in this industry now for 10 years, which is crazy. It feels like yesterday I was at Ohio State, but this has been the most fun that like I've done, like as far as a project is concerned, like doing this stuff with you every week. And just kind of like, diving into the Spurs and watching them and owning them and owning that coverage, I should say. It's just, it's been such a pleasure. And like when I'm gone, like I cannot wait to be a fan of the pod, because I think what most people, need to know is there are two people that talk constantly without shutting up, and Tom's still going to be here. So you're not going to like lose any minutes. I promise you that. And the beautiful thing is, and we've talked about it off of the podcast, but there will be more elements to the podcast as it grows. This was year one, and just for me, I was so excited to see where this thing was going and being a part of that growth. Now I get to watch it from the other end. But for people out there listening, thank you for listening. 1, 2, please continue to listen, because these guys are awesome and they know what they're talking about. And I still have my Clean Glass subscription for the rest of the year, so I'll still be utilizing it. They're going to continue to grow this product. There are going to be more people coming into Ken's. They're going to, my spot's going to be filled, and it's this thing is going to keep on blossoming, because you have 2 guys here who are committed to you, the fans. They're committed to their craft, and this was just an amazing experience. And it's part of work, but it doesn't feel like it when we jump on this thing. And the amount of fun we can have just kind of riffing and talking about things, I'm going to miss that a lot. And I'm going to miss you guys a lot doing this weekly. So, it sucks. Saying goodbye sucks. But as I tell Spurs Twitter, I'm not going anywhere. If you guys know me, I still fire off tweets about the Zags. I still mention the Zags, right? I just did it this podcast. So, once I'm loyal to a fault sometimes, but I don't have an NBA team to follow there, and so it's gonna be great that I can use the Spurs sort of be a little bit more of a fan than I am these days, where I'm way more critical and level-headed. So I'll be joining you guys on the Riverwalk if they can ever pull off another title, and hopefully they're doing it with Pop as a head coach and they can get that done one more time. But I do believe in this group, and I believe in their future, and those weren't lies, and I'm not trying to pander to the audience, because if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't say it. So that's my truth, and I'm sticking to it.
And that's
Evan. I was way too sincere, Evan.
And Tom Smells. There you go. You have
There
it.
you go.
All right, there you go.
That's Evan Klosky. You can give him a follow at Evan Klosky. Still worth the follow, even if just in the Spurs fandom. That's Tom Petrini joining us as well at Real Tom Petrini. You can follow the podcast at Big Fun Pod. I'm Jackson Floyd at JacksonKins5. And this has been the Big Fun Pod, a San Antonio Spurs podcast brought to you by Kins5, the official TV station of the Spurs. We'll see you next time.